Our next presenter is a true wizard in data visualization. He is able to take arcane statistics and present them in meaningful and interesting ways. He uses these skills very in unusual formats. He wanted to estimate how many candies he needed for Halloween. The trick-or-treat estimator he created is now used by thousands. When I found out that he had been inspired by Alain Bertaud's book to calculate the density gradient of Vancouver, I knew he needed to be part of this event. Now he has created a program so you can calculate the density gradient of any city in the world. We are lucky to have him in Vancouver. He comes via Germany, Chicago, Taiwan, and many other places. We are happy to have him here. Please welcome Jens von Bergmann.
It's my pleasure to be here and to participate in this event. And I want to pick up on where Alain Bertaud started talking, and that is the population density patterns that we have in the city. So I want to focus on a different aspect of it, which is population change between 1971 and 2016. So what we see here in green is where the population has grown, and the height gives us the population growth in people per unit area. And in purple, in the purplish tones, we see population loss. So Vancouver has grown quite unevenly, and the high density pattern that Alain Bertaud has showed in the central parts of the city, we can see that a lot of that has been growth that we know of, Yaletown, Cole Harbour, where we've added a lot of people. The West End has stayed somewhat mixed. Some areas have lost population, some have gained population, but really the big part that stands out for me is the whitish, neutral, pinkish areas that we see to the south of the downtown and the surrounding belt of downtown, where basically no growth has happened. We see similar patterns in West Vancouver and in other parts. So Vancouver has grown very unevenly geographically. How has this happened, really? We have in Metro Vancouver now a planning process that tries to allocate growth through different regions in the city. What we see that growth has slowed. So if we're looking at on the x-axis here, we see dwelling growth. On the y-axis, population growth. Generally, all kind of municipalities, the individual dots of municipalities here have grown roughly at the same rate in population to dwellings. There's some differences depending on the mix of what kind of dwellings we deliver. Is it single-family homes or is it smaller apartments? And Metro Vancouver overall, we've seen a slowing of dwelling growth. In each of these inter-census periods, we've grown slower when it comes to adding dwellings. And accordingly, population growth has also slowed. Now, what is governing where growth lands, mostly we do that through zoning. And what you see here is from the Metro Vancouver zoning project that Nathan Lauster and I have done. You see a unified zoning fabric that classifies it here into some simple zoning categories. A lot of our growth in the city of Vancouver has happened along the commercial zones recently, but also very importantly through spot zoning or comprehensive development. The yellow areas, our version of our yellow belt here, this is what we've seen on our population change map, where population really hasn't changed much. Zoning bylaws really function by limiting how we can share land, if we focus in on residential zoning. And it does it in several ways. It limits the number of dwelling units that we can have on a particular parcel, for example, by restricting stratification. It limits the ability to share a dwelling unit by defining what a family is. If you have single-family zoning, you need to define what a family is, and we do this. And we restrict, for example, how many kitchens we can have in a dwelling unit, which restricts the ability to share it comfortably. And we limit the ability to subdivide. a lot. And of course, on top of all of this is just how much can we actually build on top to accommodate things. For this short talk, I want to focus on this last bit, limiting the ability to subdivide just a physical lot. And here's a little snapshot in the city of Vancouver of the rules of how we do this. So here, each parcel is colored by its minimum frontage. So somehow we've decided in the city of Vancouver that in some lots, they can have a 30-foot frontage, but another lot nearby needs to have a 150-foot frontage minimum. So you can't subdivide it without this. There's really no clear rule of why this is the case other than that's what it was when the rule came in place. So how did this happen? How did some of those strict rules come into place? And this really happened in the 80s. This is a newspaper clipping from the 80s that's decrying somebody who's trying to build a house on a 17-foot wide house on a small lot. And it's called an assault on the neighborhood. So here, the neighborhood groups finally managed to push back and got the permission for this house to be built revoked. Actually, later on, this house did get built eventually. But during this time is when some of those zonings got codified about the frontage throughout the city to prevent, prevent what? Prevent houses like this one, which are narrow on smaller lots than our regular houses, but we deemed to be an assault on the neighborhood. So this we can take and ask, well, what do we lose as a city by not allowing skinny lots? Or we can think of this maybe differently. Instead of subdividing the land, we could subdivide air parcels and allow stratification in some sense. But what do we lose? And we can calculate the opportunity cost that denies people opportunity to live close to jobs and amenities. And that comes out just if we look at disallowing 1 to 2 lot splits to about $40 billion just for the city of Vancouver. So the opportunity cost of pushing people out is very large. And what do these people do? Well, here's a pattern of commutes, which unfortunately is not animated in this slide deck, but it shows you roughly how people commute into the city and between cities. And you see a back and forth, but there's a very strong trend to that draws commuters from the outside toward the central part of the city, between municipalities. And this is all I have for you today.